At various points in our lives, we all face that age-old question: what game do I play next? I most recently faced this dilemma, compounded by some other life dilemmas. I had not only finished my most recent playthrough of a personal favorite, Persona 5, but I had also finished a massive video essay project detailing my love of Persona 5 in what can only be described as the world's least relatable passion project. Then, after a holiday time viewing of Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa, it only made sense to set up Ghost of Tsushima as my next game to play. I quickly plowed through the game, beating it about as fast as I possibly could, and I loved every second of it. But then that dilemma creeps in once again. See, I knew that I was going to play Ghost after I finished playing Persona and produced that video essay. But beyond that, I had kind of blown through Ghost without much of a plan. I had not planned on making a video essay about Ghost, but, well, if you subscribe to the channel, then you'll notice that, yeah, I totally made a video essay about Ghost. Making that essay bought me some time, but it didn't answer that question that was in front of me. What do I play next? Do I buy an entirely new game that's on my wish list? The start of the year budget wasn't very conducive to that idea, since we had done really dumb stuff at the end of last year, like purchasing a new house. But hey, there's always that huge backlog of games to play, right? But as it always goes with backlogs, I scanned the list over and over and over again, and none of them really jumped out at me. Nothing really ever felt like the right decision. I did go vintage for just a little bit, playing a few PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 games, mostly for nostalgia's sake, but ultimately I felt clueless. This wouldn't typically be as big a deal as it was this time around. Typically this is just some sort of annoyance, and I play a few games until one of them finally clicks and I spend several hours in it. But this time was different. This time around, I tested positive for COVID-19. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. I don't ever want to actually make light of the situation that's gone on around the globe for the past year. Thankfully, all I really got was a case of COVID that hit me like a really bad flu. I was running a fever for about a week, and then the next couple of weeks after that, I was really tired and fatigued. In fact, the several days immediately after running a fever, I couldn't really sit up for more than about an hour without wanting to pass out, which, as you can imagine, makes it a little bit difficult to find a video game to play. Because fatigue and sickness, they're their own battle, but there's another battle that you don't really prepare for when you're sick at home for a couple of weeks at a time in an attempt to not spread a global virus any farther. That battle is the battle of being insanely indecisive. You become so just out of it and indecisive from not having anything to do or any motivation to do anything that your wife, who has lost her sense of taste entirely due to COVID-19, insists that you decide on and cook dinner just so you'll stop freaking whining about being so bored. But when you're super bored, nothing sounds interesting to do. It's like trying to dig yourself out of a pit. And that just further exemplifies the dilemma of not really knowing what to play next. But after a period of indecisiveness, I thought about two games that I'd recently been gifted by my brother-in-law. That's the guy that married my wife's sister. So my sister-in-law's husband is my brother-in-law, if you weren't following my train of thought. At Christmas time, he gifted me two games that he figured I would enjoy. One was Hades, the super popular roguelite that everyone in the world seems to have played already and raves about all the time. This seemed like a great time to get into Hades, as the immediate hype rush had worn down a bit so I could actually objectively look at it, but I didn't feel like playing that. Partly because I already knew what Hades was. I was at least somewhat familiar with the game, and after being trapped in the house with nothing to do for a few weeks, I kind of wanted to dive into something that I had no idea about, something that was totally unknown to me. Hades could wait until I was in a better headspace, which, now that I've said it out loud, is is a sentence I never really expected to ever say. Instead of picking a game at random, I decided to go with the other game that my brother-in-law had given to me. I mean, if it was good enough that he would recommend it and obscure enough that I'd never heard of it, then maybe it was just the right thing for me at that point in time. Thus, being delusional towards the end of a self-quarantine period, I blindly started up Firewatch. Oh my gosh, this backstory is so sad. What am I playing? Why did I sign up for this? Okay, sorry. Like I said, I had no idea what I was getting into, but I didn't really expect a game that starts off so heartbreakingly. I mean, almost instantly you're introduced to the story of a man who takes a park ranger job in the middle of nowhere in order to escape all of the problems of his life and his sick wife. It's really always impressive the creative direction that indie games can take. This is ultimately a first-person exploration style, very narrative-based game, but the opening of the game is entirely text-based, and it's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure sort of thing. Really, the story is pretty fixed in general. This is kind of just a way of making you feel like you have a little bit more say in it. Either way, it works. But after all of that, the gameplay then switches to walking around the park. The only communication you have with anyone is over a radio, exploring and investigating a mystery. All right, before I go any further, I do feel like I need to say this, and it's very important. You know that I specifically don't try to put anything that is a spoiler in any of these videos, but you know that these videos are also kind of best appreciated, I think, when you have played the game that's being talked about, because I jumped into Firewatch knowing nothing about it and knowing nothing about the story that it tells. I think it's really important that you don't either. So for the rest of this video, I'm not going to say a single thing about the story of Firewatch. If you're curious about a beautiful, heartfelt narrative wrapped up in an exploration game, then stop watching, go play it, and come back. It won't take you very long. The story is only about 4 hours or so of gameplay length. Though that said, once again, I promise I will not reveal any of the narrative in this video, and I might not even necessarily talk much about the game itself anymore. I'll talk about a lot of things that have been on my mind ever since I played the game, things that the game made me think about. So if you want to play the game before watching the rest of this, this is your out. Break away now, come back later. I won't be mad. You good? I'm good. I'm gonna keep going if you're ready. During my thankfully very mild COVID battle, I got an email from the website fanatical.com, one of those video game reselling sites that often features a lot of sales on Steam codes and other games, especially like small indie games and things like that. They advertised a package of games entitled Learn Japanese to Survive. It was on sale for $2, and I mean, I bought it because hey, I was bored. Maybe it would be fun to learn how to read some basic Japanese. I don't know. Basically, I was looking for anything to entertain me and any method of escape from where I had found myself at that point in time. I was only stuck at home for a very small amount of time, especially compared to the past 12 months of very cautiously living life and leaving the house only when very necessary. It wasn't like I didn't have anything to do either during this point in time. Tyler likes to film his little videos about his comic collection or his toy hauls, all that sort of thing, and I enjoy doing the editing for it more than he does, so I do the editing for the channel. Over the past 12 months, I mean, I wrote my first novel, you know, start to finish, actually finishing the project, and I mean, it sucks. It's incredibly bad. And what I'm saying is I had things to work on, and I still have things to work on and things to do. But, I mean, we've all been through this thing over the past year, and we're all frustrated, I think. It was dumb wanting or having this feeling of wanting to escape after only a brief sickness and a brief time being completely confined to my house. Again, especially in light of people that have had it much worse over the past 12 months. But then also imagine maybe the character of Firewatch, having several years of traumatic life experiences, feeling that need to escape. Imagine wanting to get away from things so badly that you take a job at a fire tower in the middle of nowhere in a park. As well, a major aspect of my life that I spent a lot of time over the past year exploring is my struggle with ADHD. I've known I've had ADHD for basically my entire life, and when I was in high school and college, I knew how to deal with it a little bit, or how to embrace it is really what you should do with ADHD. But the way that it manifested itself in my adult years is kind of tricky for me to try to figure out. See, at this stage in my adult life, in my 30s, I'm more established. I'm in something resembling a career. I'm married to an absolutely amazing woman. We have 2 hilariously goofy dogs, and like I mentioned, we just bought a baller house. Still, and well, partially because of this establishment, I am torn between the constant desire to make a better life for myself and my family and wanting to enjoy the life that I have. There's always a constant battle of wondering, should I be doing more? Should I be earning more? Should I be producing more content? Versus this idea of, I've done well. I've paid my dues in a lot of ways. I probably am totally entitled to relaxing and just embracing where I am a little bit more. I feel like, because of being torn between these things, I feel like I shouldn't be here, which is something that the protagonist of Firewatch actually says a few times throughout this narrative. I shouldn't be here. And when I feel like I shouldn't be here in this stage of life, maybe just because I'm reluctant to admit that I'm a grown-up now, and I'm not that weird 17-year-old high schooler that used to make stupid short movies with Tyler in his parents' backyard. When I feel this way, I think of 2 stories pretty often, both involving probably the 2 most influential men in my life. One story involves my father, early on in his marriage to my mom, where he had just started working as an engineer at some startup company, and after his first day of work there, he came home, and my mom tells me he cried. He cried, I assume, because he couldn't tell at the time what the future held. He couldn't tell if this would be a deeply fulfilling career decision or an unsettling one. There was a lot of unknown. And so, well, it hit him, and he cried a little bit about it. And then he promptly worked at that company for the next 35 years. I'm sure that he had plenty of fulfilling work moments, just as I'm sure that there were plenty of unfulfilling ones. I'm sure there were nights that he was able to leave work frustrations at the office and not let them impact those of us at home. I'm sure there were nights that he couldn't leave them behind, and it did impact us. That's kind of just how work life goes sometimes. Sometimes you just don't do a good job of leaving the unimportant things behind. The point is, for whatever reason, whether he felt that it was the right thing to do or just because he didn't feel like he had any other choice, he stayed at that company to take care of his family. And it worked out for those 35 years because he got to advance through the ranks at that company, and he did take care of us. The other story involves my Uncle Richard, a brilliant and incredibly kind man who typically was his own worst enemy when it came to progressing upward at work. For most of my life, he worked at a local phone company back when landlines were a thing that people had. After that job, he got like HVAC certified and ended up working facilities and maintenance at the college that actually Tyler went to, the college that's in our hometown. He never had very glorious jobs. He never had very, admirable jobs that we really in society respect a huge amount. But he didn't care that much about that because ultimately he loved working hard, and he took a great amount of satisfaction and pride in his work a lot of times because that work then allowed him to take care of others. I'll always remember a time when I was helping him out with some odd jobs around his house, and I forget what we were working on. I forget how old I was at the time, All I really remember is that by then he had learned that food was a major motivating factor for me. He offered to go pick up some breakfast at our local Chick-fil-A. So I stayed at his house and did work, and he went off to pick up food. And when he returned, he handed me my biscuit, my hash browns, whatever I had ordered. And then he poured himself a bowl of cereal, sat down, and started eating it. I asked him, did you not bother getting himself anything from the restaurant? And he said, with this kind of pained look on his face, that while he was leaving the restaurant, he drove by a woman with a bicycle who looked like she was in need of something. And he talked to her because he talked to nearly every stranger that he possibly could. She said that she was trying her best to get to a city that was some 40 miles away from where she was. All she had was that bicycle and the tattered clothes on her back. He felt so bad that he asked her if she wanted his food. She said yes, so he gave it to her. He literally gave a stranger his breakfast just because he could tell that she needed it. He was a man who worked for years in thankless, unglorified jobs, but was always quick to give whatever he could to those that he felt like needed it more than him. And I mention both of these stories because they're both good ways to live. You should work hard to take care of your family, to advance through the ranks at work, to make a better life for yourself and your kids, like my dad tried to do. You should also take care of those who are on harder times than you with whatever means you have, and be satisfied with just the concept of working hard and being proud of the work that you do. Heck, you should take care of those who are better off than you too, who have forgotten what sympathy looks like. I think there's a lesson that we could all learn from that. But I also mention these two stories because now, as a 33-year-old, I find myself constantly torn between those two stages of life. How do I rectify the desire to live a better life with the desire to do the most with what I have in front of me now? How do I make myself productive while also learning to be okay with the downtime and relaxing? And I get that like job fulfillment wasn't always something that was super emphasized in earlier generations as it is and right now with, you know, we millennials and then the Gen Zs that come after us. God bless them, they aren't going to have a single clue what to do with work. But we are kind of told that we should find a lot more fulfillment in our job lives than maybe we normally do. And that kind of adds to this feeling of often being torn between these two things. In a way, life seemed so much simpler when I was just out of college and I was confused and kind of scared of the future. Back then, my goals were simply earn enough money to survive and pay rent and bills, and then just hang out with my friends all the time. Sure, a lot of those times after I had paid rent and bills, I barely had like $20 in my pocket and was struggling to find some sort of side job or a music gig or something that could help me, eat. And sure, during that point in time, I was single and was very lonely a lot of times. But if we go off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, things were simpler. I had my need of shelter, food, community. All of those things were met. I was surviving and I was being a part of community. But now it's much different. I just turned 33. I'm a decade removed from those weird post-college days. My 32nd year of life wasn't what I had set out for it to be because it was 2020. I mean, it wasn't what anyone set out for 2020 to be. There was a pandemic. There were these horrible but eye-opening moments of social unrest that I think showed, and a very important lesson, and one that I think Firewatch kind of exemplifies, that a lot of good can come out of horrible situations if we're willing to work for it. But it all takes a lot of humility and a lot of work. And I hope that we never forget that. I hope that I never forget that because, as just some white dude in this world, it's what I need to always learn more about and be reminded of. That said, if I'm honest, 32 as an age, on a personal note, was a great age for me. A lot of personal good somehow came out of my 32nd year of life. But now I'm 33 and, I've spent a lot of 2021 kind of feeling a bit overwhelmed. I mean, my basic needs, according to Maslow, are entirely met and then some. But that brings about those other things with it. I don't hang out with my friends quite as much anymore. Not just because of the COVID-19 situation, but, because we're all married, most of us have kids, we're busy. It's not like I can just pull out Rock Band with my roommates and have a jam session in the middle of the day like we used to be able to do. We're busy. I'm busy. I don't struggle to pay bills or to put food on the table, and I'm certainly not single and lonely, but now, much more than I ever was back then, I'm busy. And sometimes being busy means you're kind of unsatisfied. There was some sort of glorious, romanticized fun to be had in those weird early 20s days. Those days of finding a random odd job to earn the money needed to survive. There was an adventure to be had, right? It's funny now to be 33 and struggling to find things to do for free that are as exciting and engaging as those freelance gigs were 10 years ago. And I realize now the fact that I had tried to deny for most of my adult life, and really ever since I left college. See, in college, in high school, there was always something entertaining to do or be for my friends. I could always entertain somebody. We could record goofy short films. We could plan goofy events for the dorms or the student body to take part in. Honestly, I hate being the center of attention. I really don't like attention being on me, but I love entertaining people. That's the stupid dichotomy that I have to reluctantly come face to face with now at 33. I hate being the center of attention, but if I don't have an audience, I will die. We're told we're supposed to find more fulfillment in what we do or chase our passions more or whatever that is. But we're also told that we should be okay with being who we are and it's okay to not be okay. We're told a lot of times that we're supposed to be torn between these two stages of life. And I'm starting to think that we shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. This is a stage of life that we all find ourselves in from time to time, and it's something that the protagonist of Firewatch finds himself in. He finds himself so torn between these things that he leaves responsibility behind to try to escape from the stage of life that he finds himself in. And that's ultimately what Firewatch is all about. Not just the protagonist, but all the other characters involved are having to learn the importance of simply taking responsibility. Firewatch is a game about responsibility. I jumped into this game blindly. And hey, sometimes it feels like I'm going through life blindly. I never really expected to be 33 years old, leaving my Dr. J year behind and going into my Larry Bird year, and working in educational, informational technology. I mean, I went to college to study radio work. I have a degree in broadcast communication and psychology. There's no IT in that. I started this YouTube channel with, a friend that I've known since I was like 6 years old because, well, we just kind of missed making videos like we used to do in high school and college. And then, heck, we kind of stopped making videos for this YouTube channel for a while because we had no idea what we wanted to do with the channel. I mean, did we really want to make a bunch of like trendy reaction videos or basically chase a formula, chase an algorithm around? Or did we just want to make the videos that we kind of felt like making regardless of whether or not people ever watched it or cared to watch it? Like video essays about indie games and Persona 5. Should I talk more about Persona 5? I haven't referenced Final Fantasy Tactics yet in this video. I guess I should do that now, Final Fantasy Tactics. But it's a debate that we still have even when talking about the YouTube channel. Tyler and I differ greatly on our creative directions, and well, we both need that dichotomy. We need each other to balance each other out. But much like that protagonist in Firewatch, a lot of times we never really know who we are until we pull ourselves back a bit and get away from everything, away from all those external outside influences, and take the time to discover ourselves in the wilderness. And look, it doesn't have to be like a physical middle of the woods style of wilderness, okay? Personally, I hate the wilderness. I hate nature. I would be the absolute worst spokesperson for saving the planet because I'm allergic to like everything that's outside these four walls here. The entire world makes me feel sick. Why in the world would I want to save it? But there's a wilderness that we can find by simply breaking out of the norm of the lives that we make for ourselves, the lives that we find ourselves in. This wilderness, whether it be an actual physical wilderness or whether it be just getting away from everything for a little while, this wilderness helps remind us who we are and helps us to remind us who we want to be. But you know what? I don't even necessarily want to hark on that message any more than I have to. I did an entire 40-minute long video essay about Persona 5 and the concept of living into our true selves and friendship and community along the way, and you know what, just watch that video. It's a lot better than this one. What I mean when I talk about getting out into the wilderness and away from everything is that ultimately we need the unknown. It's easy to make YouTube videos for a YouTube channel that might follow a formula or might try to snag onto this algorithm and somehow go viral because it's a popular topic. It's easy to try all of that, but ultimately success in that regard is all a crapshoot. It's useless to chase after some sort of formula that might make you happy or might bring you success or might make your life better. I mean, just look at all the GameStop stock mess. That was supposed to be a get-rich-quick formula, right? It's gonna make everyone rich, make life easy for everyone who got into it, but it didn't, and it can't. It's not feasible because formulas can always go wrong. That's because formulas ignore the unknown, and the unknown can always creep in when you least expect it. I think I'm figuring out now that while we love formulas, we really have to embrace the unknown. And it's funny because, man, we hate not knowing everything. We hate not having the answers. But I think in order to really live, you have to just embrace the fact that the unknown is always there. There's always so many answers we don't have. Just embrace it. It may be fun to chase after the formula for life that other people might follow. You may follow a formula of getting married early, buying a house as soon as possible. You might see a formula that's the complete opposite of avoiding marriage, avoiding stability, establishment, all of that. And you might follow that because that's a formula in and of itself. But the formula is not the be-all, end-all to life. The unknown always comes for us regardless of the best plans that we make. You'll plan to make a YouTube video that follows the formula perfectly, and then it gets a minuscule amount of views and it never gets shared anywhere. You'll find a spouse, a house, a career that follows the formula perfectly, and then once you hit all of that, you go, well, hold on, what's next? And be kind of clueless about what to chase after now. You'll hit a stride in your work life and your creative endeavors, and I mean, then you'll test positive for COVID-19 and lose all motivation to do anything because your ADHD brain is stupid. Like, it doesn't matter what formula you might want to follow. Just remember that the unknown is always there, but the unknown is good. I spent a lot of my life, really up until about my late 20s, afraid of what was unknown, and I realize now how dumb that was because the unknown is where all the good stuff is. The unknown is where all the opportunity hides. I look back and I don't know if that young version of my dad who cried after his first day of work was okay with his decision, or my uncle who never really had a great life for himself but tried hard to make life better for those around him. I don't know if either of them felt like they made all the right decisions or if they followed the formula right or whatever it may be. But they took responsibility wherever they were. I don't know why my brother-in-law gifted me a copy of Firewatch. I don't even know if I'm really happy that he did, but I know that I'm happy that I found a game to jump blindly into and experience without any idea of what was going to happen to me when I got in there. It was kind of weirdly comforting in these, our poorly coined unprecedented days, to be able to experience the unknown freely and willingly. It was great to venture into the unknown, and much like the protagonist of Firewatch, to remember that the most important thing is to learn once again to take responsibility. You may have family to take care of, you may have a job to work at, you may have the calling to move up in life, you may have the calling to move outward in life, into the community more, into the cities around you, into the lives of people that you know about that need extra help. You may need to get away for just a little bit to get perspective, but ultimately you're going to learn that life is about taking responsibility, especially in the midst of the unknown. It may be as a husband, as an employee, as a white dude who needs to humbly learn more about the world around him. Could be whatever. The most important thing is to learn once again to be exactly where you are supposed to be. Used to go